We talked a little bit a while ago about, it was like a Monday live. I don't know if you guys have noticed. Well, if you watch the Monday week ahead videos and the, content that I post throughout the week, a lot of the times they really connect. And the ones that I've been doing, these past couple of ones that I've been doing have been really in alignment with the Monday videos of the week. However, they wouldn't necessarily be going the same week because, it's like you see it weeks after. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we've been expanding on a lot of concepts. Something that was mentioned in a week ahead video recently was, how our relationships to other people and not allowing yourself to receive because of other people and all of these other things that have gone on, right? So I want to talk about this in a couple of different ways. The first thing that I want to talk about, let's say, is subconscious jealousy. I got a deeper understanding of subconscious jealousy once, and for the past several days, my mind has been unraveling, imploding, exploding, imploding, burning up, being reborn again. Like, oh my God, everything in the world makes fucking sense. So what do we have to say about this? What we have to say is, oh my God, so good, so good, so good. Number one, everybody doesn't need to know about your dreams and your goals. This is not because people are going to put brujeria on your goals and all of these other things, right? Because people can't actually impact our stream. However, we can close ourselves off from receiving good things because of other people. You can close yourself off from receiving your desires because other people will. If you think that receiving your desires means you're going to be rejected, you're not going to allow yourself to receive what you want. Because now receiving what I want doesn't feel safe. And if it doesn't feel safe, I'm not going to allow it into my physical reality. Now, what I really, really, really want to talk about is when we don't feel safe to allow in our desires because we're afraid. Okay, no, let me just say it. Okay. For me, this was the growth. I don't want to allow myself to receive what I want, because if I allow myself to receive what I want, then everybody else will be wrong and I will be right. Do you feel me on that? Let me expand. So basically, oh my God, this is so fucking good, you guys. Okay. Basically, I was raised by emotionally immature people, right? Now, this is a bit of a cultural thing. I'll say Black culture, but it's, anyway. Okay, so Black culture, there is this energy of like elders and this energy of like old people. Perhaps in your childhood, they were referred to as grown folk, right? Which is just older generations, people older than you are supposed to be wiser than you, whatever. There is this energy and there is this belief that there is this correlation between time and wisdom that is so fucked up. Time and wisdom, all of the people that have ever in my life told me, inferred to me that I know less because I'm younger and they've been on the planet for longer. All I have to say is Donald Trump. I've never had somebody older than Donald Trump tell me that the reason they knew more than I did was because they were alive for longer. What is my point? My point is that by your logic, Donald Trump is smarter than you are. And by your logic, that older means wiser, and wiser is smarter, and we should always listen to the older people. Why the fuck don't we, as a society, want to listen to boomers? Why don't we, as a society, want to listen to older people? Why is it that all of the youngest generations, for some reason, cannot stand the older people and older generations? The logic is so fucking flawed. The idea that young people know less than you do because they've been alive for less time than you have is dumb. I'm sorry. I'm being judgmental. It's a stupid idea. It is. Have you ever seen a kid with a fucking iPad? Yeah, let's go back in time. Let's go back in time. And to everybody born in 1970, let's go back in time and drop iPads in their little 2-year-old hands. Let's go do that. And let's see if you know what the fuck to do with an iPad. And let's see if your parents can show you what the fuck to do with an iPad. You wouldn't. You couldn't. Why? Because technology wasn't there when you were born. Now, this is not to say that if a soul from 1970 was born in 1999 or 2021 that they wouldn't be able to do this. I'm not necessarily talking about your capability. I'm talking about the fact that isn't it just logical? Doesn't it just make so much fucking sense for younger people to be smarter than you? I recently got to spend some time with a second cousin of mine, or a third cousin of mine, and he is this young boy, and these video games, his understanding of technology and all of these things and how to work these things and all of this, it blows my fucking mind. Every single generation is supposed to go farther than the generation before. So why on earth would it make sense for younger generations to have less intelligence, less capability? It doesn't make sense. And your biology, in your energy, your DNA is an accumulation of all of the history of humans. Energetically, you come into the world. That's what intergenerational trauma is. Energetically, you come into the world with a specific momentum that you get from your parents. And that's why we tend to have familial gifts and things of the sort, right? I love music. My father loved to sing. Everybody on that side of the family loves music and instruments. And our grandfather did guitar and country music and all of this other stuff. Everybody has certain inclinations towards things, certain things that they're naturally gifted at in their blood. It's a DNA thing. This believing concept okay, so years ago, maybe about a year ago, no, probably about 2 years ago at this point, I kind of played around with this idea that we are born where our parents left off. And that idea came from the realization that, like, in my childhood, I got in trouble for a lot of stuff. Got in trouble for the way that I would talk to, like, teachers or what the fuck ever. And when I would get in trouble because my mother would abandon me, she would be going on and on and on about, like, I don't know where she gets this from. I would never have done that when I was her age. And what I realized was that, well, of course she wouldn't have done it when she was my age, but she would have done it at 42 years old. She would have done it at 44 years old. She would have done that at 45 years old. Because I'm a reflection of her, and I'm a reflection of her now. I wasn't raised by my mother when she was 12 years old. I was raised by my mother, not to age you, Pam, sorry, when she was in her late 30s and 40s. The woman that raised me, the person who I am learning to act based off of looking at, interpreting, mimicking, I am learning that the way that you respond to people is by cussing and doing all of these other things. I think it's so, I don't even want to say interesting, and we can really get into it in this video, when people's children do things that are inappropriate and then they go to all of these great lengths to shame their children and all of this stuff, when in reality it's like your kid just didn't wake up one day a fucking monster. Like, they had to have learned this from somewhere, and it's not coming from the television. Like, hello. So anyway, let's get a little bit back on track. My point in all of this is that when you're born, it's like you have downloaded the entirety of the human race already into your body. You're already here. You're already caught up. And you're ready to move forward. It wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be efficient for us to be born into the world and to really have to get caught up on every single fucking thing. If that was our life experience, humanity would not be growing and expanding the way that it is. Have you thought about humanity? Just the history of humanity, it's wild as fuck. Humans grow really fast. This is an amazing time to be incarnated as a human being. Human beings are so powerful and so complex and just so fucking amazing. Doesn't matter what the other animals are doing. They're great, they're amazing, worthy of love. Love to see it. But if you were incarnated as a giraffe, you really probably wouldn't be sitting there going, I wish I could create a video and take a ride on a yacht and go to Italy. I wonder what Italy's like this time of year. Like, giraffes aren't having that experience. Only humans are. And perhaps if you're like the pet of a human and you want to have the experience of traveling before you incarnate, but it's so much more limiting not to be human. Being human is just fucking dope. Anyway, my point is that kids are smarter than we are. They just are. They just are. And when we're raised in families where there's, I want to say, enmeshment trauma, emotional immaturity is the key word here. When you're raised in emotionally immature households with emotionally immature parents, emotionally immature people don't have the capacity to separate who they are from their emotional experience, their actions. What I mean to say is emotionally immature people, they put life into two categories. I'm either a good person or I'm either a bad person. I'm good or bad. So a lot of times when you get into arguments with people that are emotionally immature and you tell them something like, well, this and this and this action, it hurt my feelings, or when you said this, this and this and this, and they jump into the, oh, so I guess that makes me the bad guy, and I'm so evil, and I'm so bad, and da-da-da-da-da. Yes, they're being emotionally manipulative, and at the same time, they really perceive that. There's a lot of resistance in emotionally immature people to being wrong or to making a mistake because of the misconception, the misunderstanding that being wrong and making a mistake makes you a bad person. That doing wrong is being wrong, and being wrong makes you unworthy of love. And we, as people, as human beings, the very last thing that we want to be is unworthy of love, of course, because you need love to exist. You need love to survive. Love is everything. Basic need. We talk about this, right? So, you grew up with emotionally immature parents who had to be right. Had to be right. Emotionally immature parents who have to be right and don't have the capacity to love you. That's not somebody who has the capacity to create an environment that is, what's the word that we want to say? Optimal for growth. It doesn't even matter at this point. Because you ever have that experience where, let's say you touch a hot stove. You're like, oh, I want to touch the hot stove because you're a kid, whatever. Your parents like, don't touch that stove. That stove is hot. And then you touch the stove and you're like, oh my God, I got burnt. And then your parent's response is, see, I told you not to touch the stove. In that moment in time, there are so many things that are happening. There are so many things that you're communicating to your child, and that your child is learning about themselves, you, your relationship, what they're worthy of, the world at large. When I make a mistake, or quote unquote make a mistake, or do something that I quote unquote know that I'm not supposed to do, sometimes you do shit because you're just curious. I want to know what the fuck will happen. And that's a good enough reason to do it. And I'm not saying that you should endanger yourself or anything like that. But I'm saying that your job as a parent is to be supportive. Your job as a parent is to be supportive. When you as a kid made a mistake, and your parent's response or an authority figure's response to you making a mistake was that you deserved to be hurt, you deserved to be disappointed, you having a bad experience, it's like a I told you so. They're communicating so many things. One of the things they're communicating is that you're not capable of making good decisions for yourself. My capability isn't determined by whether or not I already know how to do something. It's not determined by whether or not that was good enough, whether or not I know how to do something. It's determined by whether or not I can learn to do something. That means that just because I make a mistake doesn't mean that I'm incapable. These are the things that kids don't know. This is why you tried to understand math one time and then you didn't get it, and then you started telling yourself the story that you were bad at math, and then you have grown into a fully grown ass adult who is like, I can't do math, when in reality you could fucking do math because you can do anything. You might not want to do math, and that's okay and that's valid, but it's not true that you don't have the capacity to learn math, because you have the capacity to do anything. But you believe that you're not capable because the messages that you received when you made mistakes were bullshit, like I told you so. Or see, I knew that was going to happen to you. Because your parents valued being right more than they valued loving you and showing up for you and supporting you. And maybe this is because they didn't know how. But we're not really talking about your parents right now. We're not talking about their childhood. Because we can acknowledge and we can understand where people are coming from, and that still doesn't take away the hurt that we feel. So it's not about blame. It's about really understanding and putting the responsibility where it lies. So you do the thing that you are not supposed to do or whatever, and you get the response from your parent of like, I told you so. Hold on, I'm plugging in my laptop. You get the response from your parent like, I told you so, whatever. Now, we're talking about subconscious jealousy as well. So this is very layered, right? Because on the one hand, you have the whole, okay, all of this experience puts you in one position. It puts you in the position of, I can't do anything that my parents don't approve of. Doing things that my parents don't approve of is not safe. It's going to get me hurt. Do you see that? If I do something that an authority figure tells me I cannot do, then I'm going to be seriously hurt. And then on top of that, if I do something that I'm not supposed to do, I'm going to be seriously hurt, and I'm not going to be supported. That's like all of the unsafes. So if I do something that I'm not supposed to do, I'm going to be emotionally unsafe, which is incredibly, incredibly lonely, or physically unsafe, which you know. So when you're trying to get something new, you're trying to do something new, become someone new, do something that you've never done before, there's this little barrier there, there's this little block there that's like, wait a second, I've never done this before, or you're doing something that's the complete opposite of what you were told to do. So you have a whole bunch of little don't touch the stove experiences. And then you also grow up in a society within a culture that's like, you should go to college, you should get degrees. That's the only path to success. Outdated, wrong, fallacy. Move on. So you grow up in a culture that values education, is hyper masculine, values action, doesn't value how you feel. You, in your life path and along your journey, start moving towards caring about how you feel. Start moving towards wanting to live life and wanting to enjoy life, wanting to love life, wanting to get the absolute most out of life. That means you want to feel good, right? Just even that turn is now like, wait a second. Because I'll tell you guys, in my life, my personal growth right now is that I do enough. I do enough. I don't need content going out on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube all of the fucking time. You get 3 fucking pieces of amazing content from me a week, you're good. I'm done. I'm chilling. Why? Because I made the decision that my job is supposed to support my life, not be my life. My job and the work that I do is supposed to support me in my hobbies and my fun and my exploration of life. All of these amazing things that I love and want to experience more and more of. My job is supposed to support this, not be the thing that I do instead of doing all of the shit that I also want to do. I love my job. It doesn't need to be my life. So posting 3 pieces of content every single week is enough. Posting however much content I'd like to post is enough. Me showing up in that energy versus being raised within a culture and a world that says you have to grind all the time. You have to put in actual work. I had a family member recently insult the fuck out of me over and over and over again, talking about I'm not doing enough work. You have to do more work. You have to do more actual work. You have to take action. It feels less agitating to me in my body because I've been processing those emotions and those feelings. And I tell you, that shit had me hot. Because the way that this family member wants me to show up in my business is the way that I was already showing up in my business years ago. I already did the work yourself into the ground way of living. And my lived experience and my inner being has guided me here. So now I'm in a position where I don't feel inclined to do a whole bunch of grinding and a whole bunch of hard work because I already did enough of that to know that there's no amount of grinding and hard work that is going to do the energetic shifting emotional work that I needed to do to get me to where the fuck I want to be. Everything that I do in my life, especially right now, is coming from a really, really strong level of expertise that not a lot of people have. I'm really fucking niche in the world. This family member's perception of me comes from, and this is my assumption, comes from their own momentum and their own relationship patterns. Yeah, let's keep it general. Their own momentums, their own relationship patterns. They're someone who has to be a source of guidance and all of this stuff for other people. I don't need guidance, and I don't need validation. And I don't receive messages from spirit through other people because I have a relationship with spirit. I don't need a middleman. And it's not about people that do need interpretation are less than or whatever. It's about the guidance that you receive. The best guidance that you're going to receive is going to guide you to a place and a position where you don't need a middleman. And at this point, I'm talking very specifically about your relationship to your inner being, who is always guiding you to your desires. This is not to say that you don't need teachers. This is not to say that you don't need external guidance. This is to say that my inner being is always guiding me to my desire. So when I say inner being, guide me to this experience, if I need to learn something, my inner being is guiding me to the teacher that I need. I went on and on and on about inner being. I need somebody to guide me to this. I'm not going to this person who isn't working out for me. I need somebody else. This is what I need. I need validation of these thoughts and da-da-da-da-da. And then I was guided to Amanda Frances. So Amanda Frances and the way that she teaches and the value that she adds to my life is different from me going to Amanda Frances and going, okay, girl, I need you to tell me exactly what I need to do. I need you to tell me exactly what my next steps are. I need you to tell me what to do, and I need you to tell me who to be, and I need you to tell me this and this and this and this and this. It's not like that. Going and receiving knowledge and information from other people is a bit more of a detached and observational process. Because I can go and I can gain a greater understanding of something, and I can take the things or interpret things for me as they align with my soul and the way that I show up in the world. But that's because I've done so much work to create boundaries. Boundaries is developing a strong sense of self. It's knowing who you are. When you have boundaries, you have a relationship with yourself, you have a relationship with your inner being. If I have healthy boundaries, then I can go and I can listen to other teachings and I can go, okay, I like this about this and that really resonates with me and I love that and I can totally incorporate this and I really, really value this and this is what I'm going with. Versus people that don't have boundaries, meaning who don't know who they are. When we don't know who we are, if you stand for nothing, bird, what'll you fall for? When we don't know who we are, when we don't know how we feel, then anything can resonate with us, which is not an amazing place to be. Because when we don't know who we are, and we are constantly looking outside of us, and we don't know who we are, that experience is one where we're attracting people who are telling us who we are, who are guiding us in a way that doesn't work for us. When I first started this journey, this business, I attracted a lot of people who when I started this, I felt like I don't know anything about this world. And the person that I am, or was someone who, I like research. Basically, I'm more of like a show me the ropes type of person. I want somebody to catch me up. I want to know how it works. I want to get enough information on this. When I know how it works, then I can do it in the way that I want to do it. I would say that that's who I am now. Previously, that last ending part wasn't there. So I just needed somebody to tell me how it was and how you're supposed to figure this out. You know what I mean? Kind of like an orientation, like how do things work? So I connected with someone who basically, she's a human being, just like we all are. And she has her own limiting beliefs and she has her own life and her own thing that she does. And she just was limited as fuck. And because, you know how they say when you're like writing an essay in school that you don't have to say like, this is what I think, this is my opinion. We know that it's what you think because it's in your paper. And so you get to just state it like fact. Yeah, everybody is doing that on the internet. Everybody is doing that in life. I'm doing it right now. Everything that we share, everything that we feel, everything that we think, everything that we believe is really going to be based in our own perception, in our own reality, in our own experience. And that's not something that we have to validate or invalidate. It's just something that is. So when we don't have our own connection to source, which we are all always connected to source, but when we aren't aware, when we don't have our own relationship with source, when we don't have our own relationship with our inner being, then we can become reliant on people outside of us to tell us who we are, and that's not a good place to be. It's like the way that I feel this very strongly is like in money and finances. I don't want to be dependent on somebody else financially, because when I'm dependent on someone else financially, meaning like my mom, for example, when I'm dependent on somebody else financially, then I have to take on their limits as my limits. Because now what I allow myself to receive is narrowed by what they will allow themselves to receive, because it's coming through them to me. It's the same thing. A psychic, a healer cannot give you information that they do not have. Years ago, I wouldn't have been able to give readings like this. I wouldn't have been able to do content like this. Was I psychic? Absolutely yes. Was I connected to spirit? Absolutely yes. Was I receiving messages from spirit? Absolutely yes. But the way that we interpret things, the conclusions that we come to, the guidance that we give is going to be coming from our own personal lens. Some people would call this being a clear channel. Different people are going to receive different messages at different places and in different vibrations, and all of them are absolutely needed. Because perhaps if I'm in a position of powerlessness, I'm going to resonate with the leader who can get me to revenge before I resonate with the leader who's in a position of empowerment. Because in terms of vibration, we're only really vibing with people that are about 2 or 3 emotions above or below us. Somebody who feels empowered and somebody who feels powerless, they're probably not going to be crossing paths. They're not going to be having conversations. So we need people, as everybody is moving up emotional ladders and different things like that, we need people at different vibrations so that we can, understand and help everybody. I understand the system. I think that it works incredibly well. The point that I'm making is that just because someone is psychic doesn't mean that they can necessarily give you the absolute best message for you. When you have a relationship with you, you can be guided to the best people for you. When you don't have a relationship with you, you get in situations that have the potential to be re-traumatizing. Which, is what it is. So my ultimate point here is that when you're dealing with people, no, let's not make it about them. The growth that you need at this point in your journey if everything that I'm saying is resonating with you, if you're the person that's like, oh my God, yes, it's like, I have been so bad at this. Like, I have had this history of people telling me about me when people don't know me at all. So I believe they call that projection. So I've had a lot of experiences of people who don't know me telling me about myself, and I allowed what they told me about me to become the way that I perceived myself. My sense of self was literally dependent on how other people perceived me. That's dangerous. Because if we all have the desire to be quote unquote good people, to be worthy of love and connection, and everybody outside of us with their various values are determining whether or not we are good people, we're codependent. Because now we have to be whoever they want us to be in order to be worthy of love. Do you understand what I'm saying? When someone else's perception of me determines whether or not I'm worthy of love, naturally I'm going to do whatever the fuck I can so that that person has a positive perception of me. But if I'm changing myself so that somebody else has a positive perception of me, I'm not actually happy. Because I'm not being who I am. I'm disconnecting myself from my inner being every single time I try to be somebody that I'm not. So what I'm talking about here is that people have perceived you in ways that are just fucking false. And subconscious jealousy comes to play here because it's at cause. That's it. I realize a lot of the reasons why people thought the things that they thought about me was because they were jealous. Just that's it. End of the tweet. Period, point blank. I sat here for so long feeling unworthy of love, feeling just inherently wrong. Core feelings of shame about who I am. Because other people were subconsciously jealous. Jealous of what? Jealous of my youth? Jealous of my potential? Jealous of what I have decided to do with my life? And these are the people who, it's mothers, it's cousins, it's aunts, it's best friends. It's the people that are supposed to be your support system and who are supposed to love you. And what I think is most important about this is that it's subconscious. It's subconscious. So they might not even be consciously thinking, I hate my daughter, or I hate my cousin, or whatever. Especially if they're emotionally immature, especially if they're emotionally unaware. You do not need to be taking advice from people who are emotionally unaware. You do not need to be taking psychic advice, insight from people who are not emotionally aware. Because if I'm not emotionally aware, then I don't know where messages are coming from. There are times where in my own sessions, I have to stop myself, pause, and take breaks because something that I might say, I'm like, ooh, that's coming from a limited place. Ooh, hold on, I got a little bit triggered there. That triggered my own limiting beliefs about what's possible. Take some breaks before you deliver this message and tap back in to your inner being and a higher perspective. If I'm not emotionally aware, then I can't know, or I don't know where that's coming from. A lot of the advice that you receive, the messages that you receive, come from people who are subconsciously jealous of you, and they are masked in this, I just want the best for you. They want you to be successful, but not too successful. They want you to be happy, but what their definition of happiness looks like. You should believe in yourself, but not all the way. Because they are jealous. That's it. That's the whole reason. They're jealous. Maybe you made different decisions with your life. Maybe you took a different path. Maybe they see potential in you that they don't see in themselves. None of that is your business. None of that is your responsibility. Those are the emotions that you want to process and work through right now. Learning, teaching yourself, showing yourself, communicating to yourself that it is safe not to be responsible for somebody else's emotions, because the whole fucking reason that I, up until now, have not been swimming in cash is because every single time I would think about my big vision, my big goals, my big dreams, all of the things that I would want to do, I would think about, and it was women. I would think about women that I have manifested into my life and messages that they've told me. And one woman tell me that it's not right to want to be famous. It's not right to want to be well known and all of this other shit. Bitch, you could be humble and forgotten if you want to. Not me. The fuck? Like, what? And so when I am thinking about my plans for the world and thinking about my desires and maybe even thinking about my own artistry, all of a sudden you see this bitch's face and voice in your mind that's like, you know, you really shouldn't want this. You should just do shit to do shit. And if nobody ever knows, then nobody knows. I'm sorry you want to be forgotten so fucking bad. Jesus Christ. That's none of my business. That's none of my business. A year ago, I was at this place where I felt so close to getting my apartment. I would say that I acknowledge and appreciate the journey that I have undergone over this period of time, because honestly, I feel more ready to have my own apartment and to have my own space now than I ever have before, just because I feel more safe, more secure with my relationship with my inner being, the universe, etc., etc. So I'm not coming from a place of regret. But about a year ago, 2020, in like the summertime, I was like, oh my God, I want to move to the beach. I want to do this and this and this. And I'm going to do all of this stuff. And I had a conversation with this woman, a coach, and she basically was just like, whoa, you're doing too much. You're self-sabotaging. You're doing all of this stuff. You need to take it slower and all of this stuff. And it was literally like, I have all of these hopes and these dreams, and you have just completely squashed my hopes and my dreams. I have allowed this to happen to myself. It happened in like 2020. And then this year, it was like a relative of mine who was, I don't really give a fuck, trying to basically tell me that like the way that I'm doing things is wrong and I have to be doing things more so her way. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at her life and I'm like, that's so crazy, because I was going to, but I decided not to, because I respect boundaries and I respect where people are in their own lives. I was going to offer her, for me to help her get to where she wants to be. Because when she talks about everything that's going on within her and her life, I'm like, oh, I could shift all of that easily and you could be having a very good feeling life. So I figured out early on that we have very similar perceptions to one another. The difference between our perceptions was that I respect her. And I respect that she has her own journey. And I respect that she's going to struggle and she's going to move through whatever challenges her soul has decided to move through in this life. And I respect that if she ever wanted to know what I had to say on a spiritual perspective, from my knowledge and my wisdom, my authority, my expertise, that she would come to me. And so I left it alone. We had a couple conversations, bumped head a couple times. I realized, oh no, this is a soft, tender area. Not worth it. I'm going to leave it alone. She didn't have that perception of me. She didn't have that respect for me and the choices that I make in my life. So she was trying to give me this advice that was unsolicited. I was uncomfortable. In this emotionally tense situation, she's trying to give me this advice, telling me that she knows, telling me that she's receiving messages from the guides, which I believe she is. And it's like she is expecting what she is saying to me to change the choices and decisions that I've already made for myself in my life. And I'm like, no, because you don't know enough about why I make the choices and decisions that I do in order to advise me on anything. You don't know me well enough to advise me on anything. You have to have intimacy with people to know what the best thing for them is. She doesn't have intimacy with me. She has assumptions about me. She has observations about me. And as we had hung out, she would mention little things of like, oh, because you have this energy, you walk into a room, it's like, I'm Nathallie Hughes and I know everything. She did this whole a imitation of me. And I remember when that had happened, this was before we'd have that uncomfortable conversation. I remember thinking to myself, that's interesting. Because at that time, I was really working on developing my self-confidence. So I wasn't believing in myself. I wasn't doing anything, consciously or subconsciously, to make myself bigger than what I am. It was her who was uncomfortable. Subconsciously, she was jealous for whatever reason and intimidated by me and the way that I show up in the world. So now, every single thing that I hear out of her mouth is discredited in one ear and out the other. In fact, I don't want to hear shit. Because you are not a credible source. I don't ask for help from people who are jealous of me. That's called self-sabotage. When your parents, your mother, the people who were closest to you growing up were the people that were subconsciously jealous of you, your subconscious definition of love is really not love. And it is jealousy. That's what needs to be worked out for you to attract better feeling relationships. Let me get all the way back on track now. My point is that in order to get what I wanted in my life, I really when I had that conversation with that coach, and she basically was just like, you want too much, which is fucking ridiculous, because looking back, the relationship that I have with money now, the desires that I have now, I already had the car that I wanted. I only would have needed a couple $1,000. Oh my God, dude. It would have been incredibly fucking easy for me to get everything that I wanted right then and there had I felt worthy and safe to receive and all of this other stuff. She could have seen growth and things like that I needed and blocks that were in my way that I didn't see. But she should have shut the fuck up. Do you know why? Because she was not going to move me through that journey. So what ended up happening was I felt like my dreams were being crushed. This is unrealistic. This is the story of Nathalie's life. Unrealistic goals. Wants things that are very improbable. Will never happen. But the truth of the fucking matter is that every single thing that I want is incredibly possible for me. I have very realistic goals. If my goal right now is to allow myself to receive $15,000, $20,000 a month, that's a realistic goal. It's hard for me to think of an unrealistic goal because I know that I can achieve anything. I love when we play this game and I really can't think of anything that's unrealistic because I want to say something like, well, if I wanted to have $1 million a month, that would be unrealistic, but it wouldn't be. Isn't it such a fun thing to be connected to your inner being? Think of a limitation. You can't. Because it doesn't fucking exist. It literally doesn't exist. Because what is the difference between me and every other white influencer in the world? What is the difference between me and Manifestation Babe? What is the difference between me and Amanda Francis? If you're going from, I think Manifestation Babe went from a $6,000 year to a $600,000 year, something ridiculous like that. Why the fuck can't that be my life? Why can't that be what I experienced? Do you know me? Have you seen me? Have you had a conversation with me lately? I'm brilliant. Not even lately, ever in life. I have realized so much over these past couple of fucking days. Also, if you have period cramps and you feel like your womb is trying to fucking kill you, yeah, probably some subconscious jealousy going through your family line. Hating women going through your family line. Emotions, feminine. An inner me. Feels like your womb is raging war against you. You guys are not friends. That energy needs to be worked through. Because it's a part of you. And your womb loves you. And shows up for you. Like your heart does. And your brain does. Etc, etc, etc. Your womb is so powerful. That's your creative energy. If you're at war with your vagina, if you're at war with your uterus, you're at war with your creative energy, your creative potential. That's a tangent I didn't expect. Moving back to the main point. The main point is that the whole reason I haven't been getting my goals and my desires is because of these messages I was receiving, which I was a vibrational match for. Let's be clear on that, because I'm not going in about, on and on and on, about people outside of me that are hurting me. What I'm saying is I have been using people outside of me as an excuse to pinch myself off from my inner being for long enough. And that's the switch that you need. Because in all truthfulness, I didn't feel worthy of my desires. I didn't feel like things were possible. I was still subconsciously, it's like this self-sabotage manifests because your relationship with your mother is the relationship, the way that your mom treats you is the way that you begin treating yourself, right? So if your mother and authority figures around you were subconsciously jealous of you and were undermining you, it is a natural consequence. Of course, you grow to become someone who subconsciously undermines yourself, doesn't respect yourself, doesn't take yourself seriously, sabotages yourself. And if that's what you're doing subconsciously, that's what you will manifest in the physical reality. This happens in your friendships, business partnerships, etc., etc., etc. And so all of the guidance that I was receiving outside of me was a reflection of what was going on inside. So when I wanted to become a vibrational match to better teachers, I did internal work first. When I wanted to become a match to better experiences, I did internal work first. I wasn't a vibrational match to Amanda Frances in 2020 because even though I was talking about things about overflow and I want savings to happen naturally and I want all of these other things that at the time I felt like were so taboo, nobody is saying this shit. I didn't have my own back on that. I didn't support myself on that. And then when I finally got to a point in my journey where I loved myself enough, had my back enough to say, I am ready to receive this information. I am ready to receive. I literally was like inner being. I need somebody to confirm that this shit is real and that this shit is possible for me. And the second that I get somebody to confirm that it's real and that it's possible for me, I'm never going to doubt it again. That's when I was guided to Amanda Frances. That's when everything really began to seriously fucking change for me. Because I was like, oh shit, I fucking knew it. And that is what so many of my realizations are. I knew it the whole time. I knew it all of my life. I knew it in my childhood. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. But to live in a reality where I get to have known it and I get to have known it boldly, I know it personally. I know it with me, myself, and I. I pushed everybody out of my life, created inner peace for myself. And now I'm starting to really show up in the world and starting to communicate to people all of the changes and everything that I have been undergoing. What does it mean to get the money, the clients, the apartment, the car, the dog, the everything? What does that mean? That means that I was right. We move through it meaning whether or not I was worthy of love. We know that it doesn't mean anything about me. However, the lifestyle that I transition into, it is a source of inspiration. So what this means is that the second that the client comes into my life, the second that the whatever comes into my life, when I sign the lease on the apartment, when it all happens for me and it happens easier than anybody outside of me told me that it could, it's going to be in that moment that, oh, holy shit, it turns out I was fucking right. And if I was right, then that means that they were wrong. And we've talked about this over the past couple of weeks, right? That things don't have to be right. They don't have to be wrong. They just have to be. However, when we're having, okay, yes, moving down that path. It doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have to be wrong. It just is. It's not about I'm right and your way of living is wrong. It's about my way of living is right for me and your way of living can be right for you. But that realization is not really the thing you need to understand to have the shift. So, other path. Can you sit and can you be okay with you being right? If all of this shit happens for me, if $20,000 lands in my bank account this week, people are going to be fucking pissed. Because that means that they were wrong and I was right. And I have been people pleasing so hard that I have cut myself off and damn near made it. It's almost like I have been subconsciously trying to force myself to go back to school. I have been subconsciously trying to force my business to be a failure so that other people can be right, so that society can be right, so that everybody else can be right and I can be wrong. That was my greatest fear. And it's what I've been manifesting subconsciously. Because when you have emotionally immature, fragile, volatile individuals that show up as authority figures in your life, and they need to be right. If they are wrong, you deal with harsh emotional consequences. Thinking about things in my brain. God. It's very frustrating for me. Because I want peace and I want harmony in relationships. But there is no amount of struggling that I can do to make somebody else happy. And I can't show up in my life not being who I am in order to please other people. It doesn't work for me. I had this family member had responded back to an Instagram post that I made weeks ago when I was in New York and all of that was happening. And they responded to the post and they basically were just like, I told you so. And they were just like, you need to release your pride and allow da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And at first, I just liked the message and I was like, I'm not going to respond because I want to keep the peace. And then I was like, no, you have me all the way fucked up. It's like you walked in off of the fucking street, no prior knowledge of anything, trying to tell Steve Jobs about computers. Like, did I just call myself the Steve Jobs of spirituality? I absolutely fucking did. Are you kidding me? Do you know who I am? Do you hear the conversations that I have with myself in the universe? Oh, I'm absolutely brilliant. I'm absolutely operating out of my zone of genius, living out my life's fucking purpose. I'm sitting here in my zone of genius and you have the audacity to come to me trying to school me on what I need to do in order to get to where I want to be spiritually. So I sent her a message because there's just some shit that I just really cannot go for. And basically what I said was, you have your way of living, because we already had this conversation. Previously, I'm giving you guys all the fucking tea, I guess. Previously, we had a conversation. We'd gotten into it. I held my ground. She stood there yelling. I sat there, cool, calm, collected, composed. Was raising my voice as well because I'm not a child. And you're not going to yell at me. I stayed really calm. After that conversation, it was going to be this weird feud. I ended up sending her a message, basically like trying to make the peace. I was like, listen, we can have a relationship. We just need to respect each other. Then the next day, you're sending me a message going back to where we just got out from, talking about you were supposed to do da-da-da-da-da. No. I was never supposed to do anything. If I was supposed to do something, then I would have done that. My point is that the difference between being the person who likes the message and doesn't say anything to keep the peace and being the person who sends the message, I didn't cuss her out or anything. I think I did really good. That's the shift that needs to happen right now. Whether that looks like actually saying something to people, setting those boundaries, whatever. But it's about showing up for yourself, and it's about standing your fucking ground when people disrespect the authority that you have over your own life. Enmeshment trauma is the idea that we all have to have the same experience and have to do the same thing, and we have to be the same person in order to fucking survive. That's not the life that I'm living. That's not the experience that I'm having. My relationship with my inner being and my spirit guides are so strong. My spirit guides are not going to send me somebody outside of me to give me a fucking message. Why would you call the person that I'm next to when you have my phone number? You wouldn't. You would call me directly. So the reason why I have come here and we're having this discussion is because, thank you, Lord Jesus, I'm finally at a place in my life where I have enough confidence in myself, in my capacity to manifest my desires into reality, to show up and to be confident in the fact that what I've asked for is coming, that what I want, I am being guided to, that I am in alignment with my inner being, and that I'm going to do everything that I need to do in order to get there. My point in all of this is that it's okay for you to release the belief that because somebody outside of you is older, that they know more, because it just doesn't make sense. It's just not real. There are so many people walking around in the world that are emotionally immature as fuck. I don't care if you are 78 years old. You could still psychologically be too. I'm not taking advice from someone else when I already have my own internal guidance system. When you can show up and you can say, number one, I know for a fact that what I've asked for is coming to me. I know that it is possible for me. I know that I'm worthy of it. When you can say that, and when you can stand your ground against people who don't agree, that's when you're ready to receive. That's when you're ready to receive. When you are ready to trust yourself over the people outside of you, when you can decipher the people outside of you that are jealous, the people outside of you that you don't need to be going to for advice. Older doesn't mean wiser. Older doesn't mean shit. There are people who live their entire lives. Don't get much smarter is all I'm saying. It's okay for you to show up in your life knowing what you know and knowing where you're going and having confidence in that and trusting in that more than you trust somebody else's perception of you, somebody else's perception of your life. Anybody looking at my physical reality and trying to use that as an excuse to justify the conclusions that they've come to about me and my capability, that's somebody who's limited as fuck. That's somebody who doesn't understand manifestation. That's somebody who doesn't understand the law of attraction. That's somebody who doesn't understand the universe that we work in, that we live in, that we exist in. It's okay for you to realize that sometimes people's perceptions of you are off as fuck. And it's okay for you to stand up against somebody else's false perception of you. And it is 110% okay for you to know what you know. And I think that I have struggled with this a lot. Because sometimes I definitely struggle to be confident and to believe in myself. There are so many times and instances, a couple, where I look back and I'm like, fuck, I knew. Recently, I've been looking back over myself over these past several years going, fuck, I knew. Reconnecting with 19-year-old me because no, wait, come back. You knew everything. You were right the whole time. All of your inner child work, all of your healing work is about coming back to the version of you that you were when you were younger. You're referencing your true self, referencing your inner being, is referencing who you were when you were younger. There's nothing in the fucking universe that says older equals wiser. There's nothing in the universe that says older equals wiser. Doesn't exist. We can have discussions about Saturn returns all you fucking want. There's nothing in the universe that says that older equals wiser. Okay. That's all that I have to say. Be who you are for your fucking pride. Stand up for yourself. And don't allow people to cross your boundaries and talk to you like they know more about your life than you do. And it's okay if you've been the person who's done that before, so have I. Period. You move on, we all do. You set your own boundaries, we all do. Moving forward. Okay, that's it. I hope that this helped you. If it did, send me messages. Love you guys. Bye.